All right, listen up. Something just went down in Washington that could totally change how your tax dollars are spent, and it affects everything from your local TV station to foreign aid that saves lives. We're talking billions of dollars slashed, and it happened in a way that's got people freaking out about who really runs the show in D.C. Here's the deal. The U.S. Senate, led by Republicans, just voted to cut about $9 billion in spending that Congress had already approved. This wasn't just some everyday budget tweak. It was a direct order from President Donald Trump, and it's called a recisions package. Now, what the heck is a recisions package? Imagine Congress already gave someone money to build a bridge. A recisions package is like the White House saying, hold up, we want to take that money back. It's basically unapproving funds that were already set aside. Normally, when Congress sets money aside, the White House has to spend it. But with this special package, if Congress approves it, the money gets unspent. The vote was super close, 51 to 48. Only two Republican senators, Susan Collins from Maine and Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, voted with all the Democrats against these cuts. That tells you how much pressure they were under. And get this, the president even threatened to withhold future endorsements for any Republican who didn't follow his orders. Talk about flexing political muscle. This whole thing was pushed by Trump and his so-called Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Yeah, it sounds like something from a video game, but it's real. They're all about finding waste, fraud, and abuse in government spending. But here's why this isn't just about money. It's about something way bigger for how our country runs. And I'll tell you exactly what that means for your TV and radio at the end of this video. So stick around. So, what exactly got the axe in this huge spending cut? We're talking about two main areas, public broadcasting and foreign aid. First, let's hit public broadcasting. This means a massive cut of about $1 billion from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This is the group that funnels federal money to NPR and PBS and their local stations all across the country. Why are they doing this? Republicans argue that public media, like NPR and PBS, has a, quote, liberal bias and is a megaphone for partisan left-wing activism. They've even pointed to specific examples like a drag queen appearing on a kids show or how NPR covered the Hunter Biden laptop story and the COVID lab leak theory. One senator said American taxpayers should not be forced to subsidize programming that glorifies radical gender ideology in schools or pushes to defund the police. Another said, if you want to watch the left-wing propaganda, turn on MSNBC, but the taxpayers should not be forced to subsidize it. But here's the gut punch. Public media leaders are warning that these cuts will be devastating. They could lead to job losses, less local news coverage, and even stations shutting down, especially in rural areas. Think about it. Many of these smaller stations rely heavily on federal money. They're often the only source for local news, weather forecasts, and emergency alerts, literally life-saving information. NPR CEO even said nearly 3 out of 4 Americans rely on public radio for safety alerts. Senator Lisa Murkowski, who voted against the cuts, highlighted how public radio provided critical tsunami warnings in Alaska just hours after the vote. On the other side, Democrats like Senator Bernie Sanders argue that Trump wants to silence public broadcasting because it represents an independent voice. He said Trump, like all authoritarians, doesn't like criticism or objective reporting. He just wants to be flattered. Plus, polls show that about 2/3 of Americans actually support federal funding for public radio. Now for this second big cut, foreign aid. About $8 billion was slashed from programs run by the State Department and the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. In fact, the Trump administration actually shut down USAID entirely earlier this month. What kind of aid are we talking about? About $4.15 billion for programs to boost economies and strengthen democracies in developing nations, about $800 million for emergency shelter, water, sanitation, and family reunification for people fleeing their homes, and about $496 million for food, water, and healthcare in countries hit by natural disasters and conflicts. Here's a shocking detail. A senior U.S. official said that nearly 500 tons of high-energy biscuits meant to feed about 27,000 starving children in Afghanistan and Pakistan will now be incinerated because of the U.S. aid shutdown. Let that sink in. Well, Republicans say this money goes to woke pet projects like DEIs in Burma and Guatemalan sex changes and voter ID in Haiti. Democrats argue that these cuts will hurt America's standing in the world and create a vacuum for rivals like China to fill in. They also say these cuts have life and death consequences for desperate people worldwide. Senator Brian Schatz put it bluntly. People are dying right now, not in spite of us, but because of us. We are causing death. One foreign aid program, PEPFAR, which fights HIV/AIDS globally, was initially on the chopping block for about $400 million, but Republicans later agreed to remove those cuts after concerns from some of their own lawmakers. So some sense prevailed there. Now, you might be thinking, okay, big cuts, but what's the real game changer here? That brings us to the craziest part of this whole situation. This vote isn't just about the money. It's a huge power play that could change how our government works forever. It's all about the power of the purse. The U.S. Constitution clearly states that Congress controls the nation's money, the purse strings. But Trump and his team have made it clear that they want to shift some of that power to the White House. This recisions process is how they're trying to do it. Here's why this vote is a big deal for that power of the purse. Normally, to pass a major spending bill in the Senate, you need 60 votes to overcome a filibuster. But with this special rescissions package, Republicans were able to ram it through with just a simple majority, 51 votes. This means the minority party, the Democrats, had almost no way to stop it. They tried introducing tons of amendments to restore funding, but every single one was shot down. This is the first time in decades that a rescissions package of this size has actually passed the Senate. In 2018, a similar request from Trump was blocked. So this is a historic win for the White House in taking power from Congress. Even some Republicans were uneasy about this. Many of them voiced frustration because the White House Office of Management and Budget didn't provide enough specific details on exactly where the cuts would land. They felt like they were being asked to sign a blank check. Senators like Roger Wicker and Tom Tillis, who ultimately voted for the bill, cautioned, let's not make a habit of this, and admitted they might regret some of the cuts later. Democrats are furious. Senator Minority Leader Schumer said Republicans are turning Congress into a subservient rubber stamp for the executive. He and other Democrats are warning that this vote upends the entire bipartisan negotiation process for future spending deals. Think about it. If you're the minority party and you compromise on a spending deal, but then the president and a narrow majority can just unapprove it later, why would you ever bother to compromise? This can make it hard, maybe even impossible, to write a bipartisan budget ever again. This means more gridlock, more fights, and potentially more government shutdowns down the road. And here's the kicker. What happens if Congress doesn't get its act together by Friday's deadline? The answer might surprise you, and it has massive implications for what comes next. I'll tell you that and more about your local stations right after this. All right, here's where we stand with this whole spending cut saga. The clock is ticking. This bill must be signed into law by midnight Friday. If Congress doesn't get it done by then, the cuts simply don't happen, and the money that was approved gets spent. The House already passed its own version of the bill in mid-June, but since the Senate made some changes, like removing those PEPFAR cuts, the bill has to go back to the House for another vote. Most observers expect House Republicans to follow Trump's demands and approve the Senate's version before the deadline. If this whole rescissions gambit succeeds, and it looks very likely, it will almost certainly open the door to a series of related efforts. This means we could see the Trump administration trying to use this same tactic to cut even more funds in the future, further challenging Congress's power over spending. Now, back to what this means for you and your community. The cuts to public broadcasting, about $1 billion over the next 2 years, are expected to hit local stations hardest, especially those in rural areas that are already at risk of becoming news deserts. These stations provide critical services like local news, weather reports, and most importantly, emergency alerts. We're talking about cuts that could threaten popular kids programming like Sesame Street and Daniel Tiger, which public media leaders say wouldn't be viable on commercial TV. So if these cuts stick, you might see less local news, fewer essential public safety broadcasts, and a real hit to educational content for kids in your area. It's a huge gamble, weighing federal spending against services many Americans rely on every single day. This is a big moment for how money is spent in Washington and what it means for your daily life. What do you think about these cuts? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this explanation helpful, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more straight talk analysis, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.